Okay, Victoria, great to be with you. How are you for
For
starters?
having me here.
Yeah, good to have you here. How's life?
Life is freaking awesome, Stuart. I'm feeling very alive. Just served a lot of breath work recently, and also I've been doing a lot myself. So I'm feeling very alive and very good.
Good. Let's talk about your work. So you're a breathwork practitioner. That's pretty much what you're going around the world teaching now. Please run me and us through what that is all about.
I would be so happy to start there because I forget sometimes that not everybody knows what breath work is the way that I talk about it. And sometimes people assume that it's just some like basic breathing exercises that go along with yoga, or that it's maybe just kind of learning how to breathe better. That's certainly what I thought it was when I went to my first workshop. I was like, oh, I'm just going to learn how to like breathe a little bit better. But the breath work that I facilitate with the O2 Awakening is conscious connected breathing, where you, for an hour straight, will breathe in and out through your mouth, and you're fully oxygenating your body, which at a physiological level and a mental level, spiritual level, is taking you into altered states where you can have deep healing experiences. You can let go of past traumas. You can connect with spiritual aspects of yourself. You can also have ideas about the future. It's a very intensive experience that helps people rapidly grow and up level in their lives in a very holistic way.
Beautiful. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, my experience with breath is really pranayama with yoga. And for me, it's been the most powerful. That and mantra has really been so much more powerful than just the physicality. It feels like working with the breath in such a conscious and a skillfully guided way as well, and like a held potent space, really can help us go beyond that which we can just do with willpower and the thinking mind.
That's exactly what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the beautiful things that happens with the breath work that I facilitate is the conscious frontal lobe thinking mind actually receives less oxygen, and the subconscious mind is activated more. So we actually do kind of override that egoic thinking analytical mind and go into a deeper place so that we can make decisions and understand our lives from more of an intuitive, bigger picture level. So that's funny that you brought that up, because at a brain level, that's actually what's happening with breath work.
Yeah, awesome. There's a common throwback on that, or kickback on that experience of, I hear it from a lot of like more dualistic kind of neo-tantric practitioners, in that, oh, you're just bypassing, you're just spiritual bypassing, and you're trying to escape the human experience. So could you talk about like your experience of like working with, trauma, shadow stuff? Does it cater for that kind of integrative healing, or is it really just an experience to go beyond the human experience and transcend?
That's such a powerful question. And it's funny that people say that about breath work, because that's actually what I used to say about meditation when I first found breath work. So for my early 20s, when I was into personal development, I was reading all of the popular books at the time. I was reading Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. And whenever something troublesome would come up in my life, maybe I was getting frustrated at a family member, or maybe I was feeling stuck in my business, or maybe, you have those days where you just feel totally off and you have no idea why. You're like, yesterday I was crushing it at life. Why am I totally off today? What I would do is I would just try and come to the present moment, or I would try and go into a meditation where I'd be like, I am one with everything. I am not my mind. And I would try to not associate with my mind or my emotions. And of course, that served me to a certain extent, because The Power of Now is an amazing book and meditation is an incredible tool. At the same time, with where I was at in my journey, I hadn't actually faced or understood what I was feeling and why. I would get frustrated at my family. Why? I don't know. They're wrong and I'm right. I would have those off days where I just feel deeply sad. And I'm like, why am I feeling deeply sad right now when my life is wonderful? So meditation for me actually was a bypass, a spiritual bypass, where I was just trying to transcend all of my problems. And when I found breath work, that was my first doorway into what is actually happening inside of me that's making me feel this way. So for example, I realized that the reason I was having off days was because when my parents got divorced and my dad left when I was younger, I had held it all inside and been like, I'm going to be the strong one because nobody was there to help me process emotions. So I was carrying all of this sadness and feelings of abandonment inside of me. And when, even in my early 20s, when something would still trigger that, say a partner would leave or something like that, that would come up. And then I would be reliving bits of that trauma. So breath work was the first thing that actually helped me go inside and be like, oh my goodness, I'm still sad about my dad leaving. I had no idea. And then through breath work, rather than transcending it, you can actually, at a physiological level, release trauma from your nervous system. So people often go into full body shakes because they're releasing trauma. And then at a mind level, you can bring pain that was at the subconscious level to your conscious mind and make sense of it. So breathwork has actually been one of the few tools in my life that I've been able to find that's helped me face and truly make peace with my challenges and not transcend them and bypass them.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so powerful and so needed. It's like it's become completely normalized to either bypass it, like as seekers, that's kind of all we've known how to do it for so long. That's kind of been the maps up to very recently, actually, to kind of go into a cave, go on pilgrimage, which is great. And I love to do that. But I can also see where it gets me trapped and in avoidance. So to have these tools to really penetrate that trauma and soothe the nervous system and pay close attention is so integral and feels really needed. And again, it's so seductive to just escape. I mean, I think it's healthy to get out of our mind. We all need to, you know, and that's why people are taking drugs, and there's a painkiller opioid crisis, and people are looking for all kinds of ways to get out of their mind. And I think it is good to get in touch with that kind of nete. Who am I beyond the body? Who am I beyond the ego? At the same time, we want to bring it back down, don't we? And pay attention to that trauma, pay attention to the quote unquote baggage, and let it heal, because it's so valuable, you know, like even though it can be challenging, you know, when you go face to face with our shit and our traumas. But when we can look at it with a bit more broadness of perception, like really see it for what it truly is, it's so valuable, right?
Yeah. And I could not agree more that it is important for us to not simply associate with our bodies. It is important for us to connect into that part of us that is beyond our mind, our higher selves. And what's so cool is that the more breath work I've done, and the more I have gone in, faced my trauma, faced my pain, and alchemized it so that it actually just isn't there anymore, I naturally now can go to those places where I'm beyond the body and beyond the mind.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing that I'm fighting against. So before, you know, say an ex-partner had left me and I'm so sad, and then I'm angry and I'm like, oh, because I'm angry and not happy with my life right now, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to go beyond my mind. And it's like this fight. Whereas now I'll wake up in the morning. Of course not. I'm so still deep in all of my issues. So I am not in any part in this conversation pretending like I've done so much breathwork now that I'm like beyond. But now after a breathwork session and I go, if I sit to meditate, I just naturally rise to that place of like peace inside with all that is, which allows me to rise to connection with what's beyond my body. So it's been pretty cool that the meditative state actually comes naturally now once I've worked through so much of my stuff.
Yeah, awesome. And it's like with practice, it seems we can become more aware when we get in that contracted state and not just push it away, not just defend it and deny it, not just put on a positive facade as well, but truly observe the contractions of life that are completely normal. It's normal for our nervous system to contract. But then with getting more and more skillful with the breath work, we can participate in expanding through the contractions, right?
Yes. And do you find that I'm curious from your end, because you're so in this world as well, do you find that there's taboos around like expressing emotions? Do you find that a lot of the quote unquote spiritual spaces that you inhabit always try and be Zen and not like embracing the human experience? I'm curious from your end.
I think some, like I'm in a whole variety of different like scenes. I kind of have always, even though I'm kind of in a leadership role, I also kind of float between different scenes. Like my main kind of quote unquote scene, you could say, my Sangha would be like that of Bhakti, like with the Ramdas community. And in that, it's so beautifully accepting. And there's none of that spiritual materialism shit, not that I can see anyway. It's all, some people are fully decked out in their spiritual attire, their Swami gear. Some people are wearing their Hawaiian shirts and ready, it just came from the beach. Some people, it's just anything and everything. And with that lack of like spiritual materialism, everyone's very comfortable expressing themselves, which I find very beautiful. So there's that. But then I've got other sanghas that I relate with, that's more of a Zen and fixation on meditation, and even more of a non-dual perspective. I find in that there's not as much just conversation around the human experience, because the common notion is that we're not the human experience, we're not our egos, so no one kind of talks about it, which I think can work, but I think it can also become kind of dysfunctional. And in the yoga thing, it's kind of mixed as well. There's kind of the more, this kind of new movement of like neo-tantric kind of explorations, which has a lot of beauty in it. A lot of like, everyone's very comfortable talking about their shit, which is cool. I really like that. It's really, it's almost like the other spectrum where there can be the trap of people trying to one-up each other on their shit. Like I've got a gnarlier story than you, and kind of wanting to one-up each other on their suffering. So I see that polar opposite.
And in that I see, sorry if this is inappropriate, but like spiritual masturbation.
Right.
Like I got to work on my stuff, and you just stay in this stuff because it's so good to be like messy. And I'm going to another workshop, and I have to go to another workshop rather than like actually moving through things.
Right. So I'm in lots of different communities, and I see a bit of everything, but I am seeing a lot more conscious conversation, a lot of people being honest with their shit. And so it feels kind of natural for that spiritual masturbation of like, for so long, we haven't talked about any of our shit. And it's been so chronically suppressed and oppressed. And especially, it might be a generalization, but especially for women around the world, like, and that's still happening a lot. We're very lucky even just to be able to have this conversation. There's a lot of people, again, especially women, that just still literally, maybe not literally, but pretty literally, can't talk about any of their stuff. So it seems kind of natural that there might be that excess of like, holy shit, I can finally talk about it all. Let's talk and let's deal with it. So
I love that acceptance that you bring to it. That's so beautiful, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about now, where we're not judging anything. Like as people are on this spiritual journey, we're naturally going to go down different tunnels of whatever we need to express in that moment. And sometimes it's going to be some spiritual masturbation. And past Victoria used to turn up my nose at them and be like, they're not actually on the path, quote unquote. Now I understand that it's all the freaking past. It's all the past. So I love that you brought that accepting energy into it as we're talking about that.
Yeah, and I've definitely had my moments of being really judgmental as well, feeling like, I think that is super common, like this, the initial kind of movement of one's awakening, often this kind of self-righteousness pops in. Totally. And it feels really good. It feels really empowered, and you feel like you're right on. And often with that, there's the kind of murkiness of like fundamentalism, really, of like, I've got it and my group's got it, but everyone else doesn't. And it's been really cool to get off that high horse a lot more and see that everyone's just walking each other home on various different paths,
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely had that as well. And especially around my family, how do they not understand this path that I'm on? It's obviously the better path. And then I realized that was just coming from self-protection, because once we have a certain level of consciousness and we see how we used to be, we can have some self-judgment there of like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I was like them. So then we make separation. It's like, no, I wasn't like them. I'm better now. Mm-hmm. And that's just another level of protecting us from actually accepting all of who we are in our beautiful places and our gnarly places. So I can definitely relate to that part of self-righteousness, and then just being like, that was self-protection. And I remember when I first getting the journey, the people looked at me on social media. I feel like maybe this was just the pocket that I was in, but I feel like it was also just the personal development in general, like 5 or 10 years ago, was very just celebrating the good and the positive and the light. We have to be as positive as we can. And that was really, it was inspiring in many ways, because I was like, wow, it's possible for me to grow and let go of stuff. But at the same time, I would also shame myself, because say I'd had a really good 2 months, then I felt like I was in the light, quote unquote. After that, if anything would come up and say I was feeling down or kind of depressed, then I would feel bad about myself and be like, oh, I guess my vibration has dropped and I'm not as conscious as I was before. So I'm really happy that more and more in this community of spirituality or awakening, whatever you want to call it, that we're really becoming more accepting of humans and all of their parts of their journey.
Yeah, totally. It did feel like a movement. It did feel like, 10 years ago, there was this real hype and peak of positivity with like The Secret and The Power of Now. And people were really, and including me, sinking our teeth into, holy shit, I can actually be positive. Like it felt good. Like I remember the feeling of like just being high on gratitude and positivity, which still occurs, but it's very natural with that positivity, there to be a plateau and then the negativity and the darkness. So I, for quite a while, didn't have any real accessible tools to work with my darkness either. And I just kind of would go clinging back to the gratitude, back to the positivity. And it worked for a while. It worked for a while until a really deep, dark plateau came up. And I hated it. I hated it for sure. But in it, a deeper wisdom and more integrative tools started to blossom. So I think it's really valuable information for people that maybe are in that first plateau after that initial like awakening or that initial kind of burst of positivity that one gets with growth and development and the opening of their heart. It's really beautiful. And I think when that first plateau comes, people freak out. And it can even be like, dark night of the soul. It can be really treacherous and scary. And for listeners, if they're either in it or they haven't quite entered that first plateau, to just have conversation and some loving kindness around that, because we need it. We need those plateaus. We need to have moments in the darkness, and to have conversation around it seems really healthy. I can't recall any conversation around it 10 years ago or so. So it's really beautiful to see it blossoming, you know?
Yeah. Your words there just hit me in the heart, because last year I also went through a very dark place, and it was tough because I still felt some shame around it, especially just with what I talk about online and what I stand for. I was like, oh, come on, I'm a breathwork practitioner. Like, I should be able to just do a few breathwork sessions on myself and have it go away. And I had that shame around not wanting to talk about it, or like, how can I be holding space for a workshop if I haven't figured all my stuff out yet? And I didn't even want to tell my close friends, because two of my closest friends are my business partners and we facilitate breathwork together. So I'm like, are they going to think poorly of me if I'm in this dark place and I haven't like figured my stuff out yet? It was kind of like I was putting them on a pedestal above me. They're more conscious. And one of the most helpful things for me in that time was having conversations about it and just normalizing it. And now, a year later from that, us three just ran a workshop this weekend, a big one, 2-day breathwork workshop. And on day 2, our theme was around our deep insecurities. And as we were preparing in the morning, one of my deep insecurities was coming to the surface. And me and my 2 facilitators were talking about it. And last year, I would have felt so ashamed about that. I would have been like, oh my goodness, I can't tell them that I'm feeling insecure about this right now. I need to just put my game face on for this workshop. But I actually vocalized it. I was like, hey, this is so interesting. I'm witnessing this like deep insecurity come up, and I'm feeling really bad about myself right now. And then we talked about it, and they're like, wow. And we linked it to our theme of the day, and they held space and helped me pinpoint it. And just like that, I felt better. So when you said those words, like having conversations about it, I just felt my heart kind of open and be like, please, yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And as practitioners, it's really beautiful to relax in that role. Like, it's kind of like a balance of being professional and really continuing your practice to be able to hold space for people that are coming to do deep work. It's like a balance of that, at the same time exposing your humanness, which that insecurity. And then what I've found since I've been more honest with my humanness is that it helps other people relax their nervous system. It helps other people wake up and grow, because it's so common for the student to put the teacher on a pedestal that's inaccessible. Like, it's going to be a huge fucking mountain to climb, and I'm never going to get there. It's this perfect human being. So I found it really evident when I've exposed my human challenges in those workshops, in those classes. It helps people even more. Like, it's not this perfect, unattainable specimen. Like, he's just like me. He's got his shit he's working on too, you know? So it's really refreshing and beautiful to hear that, huh?
Yeah. So
I'd love to, for people that don't know you, how did you stumble upon this journey of breath work? Where did it all begin, and how did it unfold? Please share of your journey a bit.
I would love to. I won't go too far back, but since I was young, I was the daughter of 2 humanitarian workers, grew up in Haiti, always had this desire to make the world a little bit different than it is now. Like, it just, as I was growing up, I was exposed to a lot of people's suffering and pain and poverty and hardship and injustice. And I was just like, things are off. Like, I feel like there's another way. So from a young age, I chose that as my path. And that first manifested as a career in community development work. And then I was like, I want to get a little bit more personal with people. So then I moved into coaching. And I was a coach for about 5 years. And I absolutely loved it, connecting with people in that intimate way. And I felt that even though my clients were having big shifts, I felt like there were some levels that were deeper than the mind, because coaching can very often work at a mind level, bringing awareness to thoughts and things that we're doing and helping people make changes. And so I was like, I want to be able to work with people that's somehow deeper than just the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't find it. I was like, Reiki isn't really for me. I'm not sure what it is. And then I moved to Bali, and my two close friends moved there as well. And one afternoon, they were like, we're going to this breathwork workshop. And they're like, I think we're going to learn how to breathe better. Like, we're just going to go check it out. And I was like, okay, whatever. You guys go do that. Like, I'm workshopped out. I'm going to go to the beach or something. And then I had lunch with them that next day, and they were just pinging. Like, their eyes were clear. They looked like their spines were straighter. They just looked like they had been on another planet. And the way that they were describing what they just experienced was beyond anything I had ever heard before. And I was like, okay, I need to try this. So I went to my first breathwork workshop the next week and had this really profound session where I saw that I was still just this very terrified young girl that was trying to be an adult and trying so hard to be an adult. It was just so clear to me in a way that I'd never seen before. And so I was like, wow, I need to come back. So for the next few months, I went to a breathwork session every week, and it just completely unraveled me. My whole life changed within 6 months. And soon after that, I was like, I would tell my friends about it, you know, friends from Canada, friends from Australia, friends in Bali. And they're like, what is this breathwork that you're talking about? And I was like, how do you not know about this? How is this not as popular as yoga? Like, this is so good. They're like, yeah, we've never heard about it. So my two friends and I were like, we're ready to be facilitators. We want other people to experience this. So we became facilitators and then started practicing. And we came together to form the O2 Awakening. And now it's our mission. We take this to as many people as we can around the world. We tour different cities globally for the year, taking breathwork to different people.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, why isn't it as popular as yoga? I mean, it's often said in yoga, like Shavasana is the most challenging asana of all. So maybe that could be why. You know, people are so distracted and tense and
afraid. They think they have monsters in their closet.
Right.
That's the main thing that keeps people coming to breath work. They're like, I don't know what's inside of me.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know what is inside me. And then they're in a lying down format or both?
Yeah, they're in a lying down format, breathing, and they have this feeling of like, I've suppressed things for so long, you know? When I feel emotions, I just watch Netflix and eat pizza. That's what I do. And I know there's something in there and I don't know what it is.
Right.
So I'm scared to finally find out what it is. And it's really sad, actually, that people are afraid of themselves because, as you and I both know, it's just a lack of love. It's just something in them that hasn't been loved. But I feel like maybe that's why there's this global revival of breathwork now, is because we went through the positivity movement. We're like, okay, it's okay to read books and understand what's happening in myself. And now we're like, okay, I'm ready to like get in there.
Yeah. And I think as much as I value the physicality of yoga, a good dynamic asana practice, I think it can commonly exacerbate people's chronic reaching for a distraction, you know, especially in the probably the most common class would be a very quick class, pretty loud music, which is healthy, you know, dynamic, getting energy moving, but it can distract people from the deeper aspects of themselves. They can potentially avoid those places, and then you're lying there going deep into everything. It's completely different. So I get why someone would be like, oh, this isn't fun. I could do something way more fun and dynamic and loud and crazy. So it's like you begin to appreciate the joy of the work. It becomes a joy, doesn't it?
It does become a joy. Yeah, I love the way you put that. It does become a joy, especially once we take away any negative connotations of any of the shadow work, and we don't try and put ourselves on pedestals anymore, and there's no more consciousness club of like levels. There's no more levels to the conscious club. It's just yeah, it does become a joy. I love that.
And yeah, the levels, I mean, that's very thick in our culture, which does get exacerbated in a lot of particular schools of yoga, the kind of award system. You know, you kind of, as you master the sequence more, you kind of come to the front of the room. Those that are lagging behind are at the back of the room. And there really is an award system that seems to be dying off. It does seem to be dying off, but it's still there, you know. And then we kind of further feed that with this whole social media dynamic, and it's a whole thing, you know. So to kill that award system and just to be and to fully magnify and reveal all of it, I mean, it's just precious. So I'm really excited with what you guys are doing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're excited too. We really feel like the workshop we just did this weekend, it's such a leveler for people. You know, we have people sharing, and we've got big social media people in there that come to our workshops, and then we have very shy, timid people that are just working 9-to-5 jobs and are, you know, not used to using their voices at all, and they're just all in the same room sharing and going through this together. And they'll be next to each other, and one person's screaming and one person's crying, and it's so beautiful. It's just like, wow, we're all in this human soup together, and it's weird and it's wild, and we love it and we hate it, and there is that beautiful equalizer in it.
Beautiful. You're also very revolutionary with how you bring this into the workplace. Can you speak about the kind of quote unquote old way of working, you know, the hustle, versus this potential new way of, what would you call it, this new possibility of working and succeeding and really rocking it in terms of work, but in a new balanced way? Can you speak about what you're finding with that?
I would love to. As a former workaholic, just as you were saying that, I just felt what that used to feel like, to hustle so hard. I was a workaholic, and that one of my biggest fears in life is that I wouldn't succeed. I felt this need to prove myself. And I also used my work as a way to avoid whatever I was feeling. So I would use Netflix and junk food, as I was describing before, but I would also use work. You know, if I just put my head down and work as hard as I can and then have something to show for it, maybe I'll feel better about myself then. And that hustle mentality is still so celebrated around us. You know, it's everywhere on social media, and just like, no pain, no gain, or you got to risk it to get the biscuit, or, you know, people just celebrate that really like yang energy. And that was the first maybe 4 years of my coaching as well, was just really like, make the to-do list as long as possible, and then just crush the to-do list as hard as I can. And hopefully that will bring me my biggest success. And I just reached this plateau with that way of working, where I was feeling kind of burnt out, comparing myself a lot to others, and felt like things were moving definitely, but at a snail's pace. And then when I found breath work, as I said before, I started doing it every week. And in a really fast way, I just started working through all my stuff. I realized how self-conscious I still was, how I wasn't saying the things I really wanted to say in my business, how I was comparing myself to others and not like getting in touch with my own vision and creating from like, what am I here to do? And in breathwork, I unraveled all of that. And within a few months, I had like doubled the amount of people I was working with, doubled my income, getting people wanting to interview me from what I was saying on my social media. My social media was going up. And I was like, holy crap, how did that just happen? I spent 4 years working at this very linear pace. And then I did this deep inner work, and my business just like quantum leap, like it wasn't linear and it was exponential. And so I took a moment to feel into it, and I was like, oh my goodness, there's this new way of working. I don't have to strive. I don't have to struggle. I can just clear my own stuff out, get really aligned on what I'm here to do, focus on that, work from a place of like an absolutely full cup, and then things just naturally flow and blossom. And so that's something I really stand for very deeply, because we're in an era where many of us that are wanting to change the world are conscious entrepreneurs. And I see a lot of conscious entrepreneurs still falling into that old-fashioned hustle striving trap. So it's something that I talk about quite passionately.
It is a huge leap, isn't it? It's such deep old conditioning that we need to put in so many fucking hours per day to get anywhere. And it's an interesting time that we're in right now, because people are feeling that. Like, a lot of jobs are becoming more automated, and a lot of people are just sitting around working, but not really working, just clocking up those hours and just really draining themselves, and a total zombie to their phone because they got no work to do. So they're just kind of slowly zombifying themselves. So it's an interesting time right now where those old modes of working are literally being killed off as this new phenomenon of automation continues to come into our lives, which a lot of people are scared of. But I think if we can take this leap and quiet our mind and really get in touch with our vision and the flow, this automated time that could be coming our way frees up more energy to really get creative and really be entrepreneurial and take those leaps. But it requires us to really own it and take responsibility and to get quiet enough, because it may not be smooth. It won't be smooth for everyone as we let go of deep old paradigms and old conditioning. So for those that are just, you know what it feels like to work so much. Was it a gradual shift, or was it a big like kind of rebirth? That's what I experienced in myself. It was like chronic fatigue just took over my life. I just felt so chronically fatigued that I needed to stop. And my body just told me, stop. And that, when I did finally stop, felt like a kind of death of how I did do things, a death of how I did look at what was productive and what was it to really work and hustle. And then gradually a rebirth of a new, more harmonious flow. What was it like for you?
Yeah. It was actually a bit of both. So I would get the new, as often happens when we're really trying to become more aware, you get the new awareness and then you're like, sweet, what do I do with this in my life?
Right.
So I got the new awareness through breathwork and whatnot of how things could feel. And I would get in touch with that and be like, awesome. But then I would bring it into an old habit.
Yeah.
I'd be like, sweet, with this new way of doing things. Okay, I understand it. So I'm going to make a to-do list of how I can do that. And then I would do that without realizing it. And then 2 weeks in, I would be feeling uninspired again and stressed. And I'm like, man, I just had that breathwork session where I got that insight. Like, what's happening? And then either a friend would point it out, or I would just see what was happening. And I'd be like, right, that old pattern tried to latch on to this new thing. So then it was just a gradual integration of this new understanding into my actual habits and my 3D life. So that was a big part of it. But then there would still be times where the old way of being would come in. It hadn't completely left me yet. Especially if there was emotion coming up, if I was feeling really not good about myself. Maybe, somebody that I look up to was crushing it and I felt like, man, I should be more like them. Then I'd probably work over the weekend and not have fun. And then that would just lead to a downward spiral. And then that ultimately led to last year when I did go into that really dark place where it's, as you described, it really felt like a death of a part of me, where I had no energy to work. I had to cancel most of my work because I was just like, why am I even here? I can't be bothered to do any of this make the world a better place stuff. Like I had none of that energy in me. And so I had to go through a solid month of that. And coming out from that, I was very careful with what I put on my plate and how I did things. So that definitely was a big death for me.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. And I think it's helpful for people to be aware of the natural processes of growth and development. Like it's not linear, you know? So like we touched
linear.
upon it before. Like it's so seductive to attach to that new peak experience or that new flow state, or it's so seductive to get attached to it. And I found that in myself, and I still do, that subtlety of getting attached to that new beautiful state. But it's very natural when we're growing and developing, and when we're really going for it, we're going to take a step back every now and then. Like that's just natural from birth. 2 steps forward, 1 step back is completely natural, but that step back can feel so crap.
So interesting you say that, Stuart, because this is one thing that I'm really feeling into right now in my awareness of like why the heck we're here and what this awakening, quote unquote, path even is in some ways it is like a step forward and a step back, right? Because we know that we want to become more conscious. We know we want to become more loving, and that's just very clear to us that that's a step forward. So in some ways, when we have the peak experience, it's good, it's forward. And then when we have the old nasty shadow part of us come up, it's a step back. And then completely simultaneously, they're both fine. Where it's like, it's just this big spectrum of human experience. And we're just meant to just zoom up and down it. And like end of our lifetime, I could be like 90 years old and be like friggin' Mother Teresa level. And then somebody says something that triggers me and I'm just like, ow. And then like, so it's this interesting thing that I've been feeling into lately of how it is a step forward and a step back, because we do know where we're headed. And simultaneously, like, it's all okay.
Yeah, there's nowhere to go. There's no steps forward or step back.
But then there is at the same time. It's like there's different levels of truth. Pretty trippy sometimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the whole point of yoga, is to merge relative truth with ultimate truth. It's like the ultimate truth.
I love that.
Yeah. The ultimate truth is there's nothing to do. It's all perfect. And we're just love. Yet the relative truth is that we got shit to do, you know. We got work to do to pay the bills, and we've got growth and development to do if we want to, if we so choose. But
if it's a pull, if it's a natural inspiration. Yeah, beautiful. I love that ultimate truth and relative truth. That definitely happened at one point in my journey where I was like, sweet, well, if it's all already love, then that means that I can just kick back and just like go on cruises for the rest of my life. And then my friends were like, yeah, definitely. But like, do you actually want to? And I was like, nah, that would be so boring. Definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, using that teaching of ultimate truth is very common in the spiritual bypass, like using a teaching of ultimate truth, like it's all love and it's all perfect and it all works out and it's all just happening, and bypassing the human experience, but then, you know, lacking virtue, being a dickhead in certain situations, and it not being spiritual at all, you know. Pretty fucking common, you know. So once again,
and I used that as a spiritual bypass for a while, going back to what we were talking about before, where I would be in my I see my own support person, because as space holders, we all have to have our own space holder. And for my first little while of seeing him, he would help me have a little breakthrough. And then I'd be like, sweet, great. Like, I'm just so grateful for this journey. And I would just have a big smile on my face. Be like, thank you. I'm so grateful for where I'm at right now. And he's like, don't give me any of that shit. He's like, you're still in pain right now. Don't tell me it's all love and you're grateful. He's like, I want you to own the pain.
Right.
And that was, and I still see that at our workshops where people come in and we're like, okay, like what's real for you right now? And they're like, there's a little bit of this coming up, but I'm just so grateful and so happy. And I have such a big smile on my face, and I'm so grateful, like, for all the love around me. And it really does keep people from going in sometimes.
Yeah. A reoccurring conversation is it keeps coming up on the importance of having that that mentor, that go-to guide, that teacher to check in with for that kind of brutal honesty, which we can bring that in ourselves, but we can be so subtly self-deceptive. And having a good look in the mirror and just getting really honest, we can do it just with that mirror. But having that person to check in with, a mentor, a teacher, a guru, even though guru has become a little bit of a dirtied word in the scene, I still appreciate the place for a true guru, to check in with, and them to just be so lovingly honest, like that tough love that is so rare,
Yeah, they're like, I see what's happening and I know where you're headed, and so I'm gonna say something that's for your highest service, even at this level, if I'm gonna seem like a douchebag.
Mm-hmm. Not just to please you, like the people pleasing thing, which I've got a lot of. That's something I got to really work with.
Same. You and me both, Stuart.
Yeah. Well, I know we're going to wrap this up soon. Is there anything you want to share with the listeners? Any upcoming workshops or anything you want to share?
We do workshops all around the world. We have a retreat coming up in Bali. But overall, you can just follow us at The Ocho Awakening on Instagram. That's where we're most active. You can follow me at Victoria_Bauman on Instagram. And also, I just want to say for anybody listening that maybe doesn't have access to breathwork right now, maybe they're like, oh, that's all well and good, Victoria, but there's nobody doing that work around me. I would just encourage them to 30 deep breath in out through their mouth right now. Once this podcast is done, just 30 times, and you will already start to feel things moving in you. And that's one of my favorite things about breath work, is we all have access to it at all times.
Beautiful. Well, I love what you're doing. It's so beautiful. Great to connect. And let's do it again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Stuart. And thank you for doing what you do in the world. It's so important.
Yeah. Much love, Victoria. All the best.
Bye, Stuart.
Bye.